All right, welcome back to another Thursday night book review. I got some extra help tonight. I got my roommate Steve here with me. He's going to be doing some reading. We're also going to be getting Stormy to do some reading tonight. We're just going to wait for her to log on, and I will send it over. That's going to distract me.
Hello.
So tonight, I'm going to have you do Stella too, just because the conversation will sound a lot better if I'm not talking to myself.
Okay, so I'm going to do Stacy, Stella, and the hospital nurse.
You got it.
Okay.
All right. So, for everybody just joining us and stuff like that, tonight we're going to be reading another chapter of the book, Paradise Reborn. This is the alternate cover, but this is the one with my daughter on it, how it was initially intended before we did the rebrand. You can still get the soft cover with this one on it, but the hard cover is the other one. So, if you guys remember from last time, what happened was Stacy and Gwen were talking about going to the mental health ward at Reedsville Medical Center, and Gwen was going to try to find a way to get in and see Stella, because that's where Stella's been this entire time. So she was doing it out of like an act of kindness and stuff like that, maybe go see Nurse Betty. So there's going to be a lot of new people introduced in this chapter. Well, not so much new. There's going to be some new, old faces returning in this chapter. Excuse me. So I'm going to have some help tonight because there's like 6 different people that talk throughout this chapter. And for me to be doing it, it's not going to do it justice. So I got some assistance. So with that being said, we're going to dive right into it. It's chapter 5, The Remnants of Things Past. In this scenario, I'll be playing Gwen throughout the whole story. I got Steve to help out with Stacy's doctor, Steve Tango, and also Nurse Betty, also known as Betty Jones. Stormy is going to be helping out by playing the role of Stacy. She'll also play the hospital nurse, and then Stella when we're introduced to Stella. So let's get it started. The Remnants of Things Past. The sweet sounds of Stacy's music lightly playing in the background as we headed to the hospital made me feel at ease. I was happy to be in the presence of my old friend again, and the uplifting song she was listening to helped me settle into the moment and just be content with everything. The hospital was only about 7-minute drive from Stacy's house, so it wouldn't take us long at all to be there. I had many thoughts in my mind about what I would say to Stella had I had the opportunity to meet her. How would she even feel about a random girl coming to visit her? Or would she even accept to meet me at all? I started to second guess my decision with each house that passed drawing closer to the hospital.
You have a favorite band you want to listen to? I can basically play whatever you want off my phone.
This is fine. I'm not picky at all. God knows it doesn't take that long to get there anyway.
Yeah, that's true. So tell me something, Gwen. Did you ever meet someone in your life that made you happy?
Well, a while back I was dating this guy, but things got pretty bad and ended.
Did he cheat on you or something?
No, nothing like that. It's hard to explain, and I would need more than a 7-minute ride to tell you about it.
Well, we got 7 minutes to the hospital and 7 minutes back, so let's hear it.
It's complicated, Stacy, and honestly, it's really not worth talking about.
He hit you, didn't he?
No, he didn't hit me. He was just into some bad stuff, just kind of sent my life into turmoil.
Did you date someone in a gang or something?
He wasn't in a gang. I can tell you're not going to let this go, so I'll just give you a summary. I dated this guy a while back named Victor, and I thought it was exactly where I wanted to be. I found out after some time that he was dealing drugs, and eventually he got killed over it.
Wow, yeah, I can imagine why you wouldn't want to talk about that.
Yeah, it was one of the hardest parts of my life, and I still haven't moved on from it.
I'm sorry for bringing it up.
It's fine. I try not to think about it all the time in my life, and honestly, it never gets brought up.
I was in a bad relationship too.
What happened?
Well, about a year ago, I was stationed with the platoon overseas, and I fell in love with one of the Marines I was stationed with. Things were so new to me, and especially being in that type of place, it just wasn't the right time in our lives. One night when we were driving into the local town, our vehicle hit a bomb planted in the road. The Humvee went flying into the air and came crashing into the ground. A few of the people I was with were killed instantly, and I barely made it out myself. Julie didn't make it out. I held her hand as she died, looking me in the eyes with absolute fear. I can still feel every minute of that moment. Julie isn't very far from my mind.
I don't know what to say, Stacy. I'm sorry for your loss.
It's fine. That's why they started sending me to all these appointments. They want me to tell them my feelings and talk about all of it, but I don't have anything to say about it. Who the fuck would want to constantly live that moment repeatedly?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I wish that all I could take some magic pill and just make all the bad shit in my life just disappear.
Yeah, for sure. The dude who comes up with that would make millions.
Yeah, I didn't know you were into girls.
It's not about male or female with me. You can love someone regardless of what plumbing they have. Love isn't bound strictly to what society thinks you should do. I see more than what's on the surface, and if they make me happy, then that's all that matters.
I smiled at Stacy, and what she was saying was so beautiful. I felt the exact same way about relationships too. She really had developed into such a special person. I couldn't help but keep a small smile plastered on my face, which is something that was foreign to me. Every day was more of a struggle, and these moments with her shared no resemblance to my normal shitty life. I felt so comfortable around her, and I wanted to start being honest with her and tell her about what's been going on in my life. She deserved for me to be honest with her, and what my life had become. I looked over at her, and when I went to speak, she said,
Look, we're here. I'm going to park over there and you can come in with me. My appointment is in 10 minutes, so we can hang out in the lobby until I get called in, and I'll see if I can find out how to visit with her.
We parked the car 30 feet from the door, and Stacy cut the engine, and we headed into the building. When we walked into the double door building, Stacy headed right up to the main counter and signaled for me to sit in the lobby. The main reception desk was behind a window with the counter right next to some vending machines. The lobby was small with about 15 seats set up next to a large window looking out into the parking lot. I sat down in the far corner of the room and waited for Stacy to come over. She was giving her name to the receptionist, so I assumed that she was just checking in. I was surprised I didn't hear any screaming or see people bound up like you do in the movies. I always pictured like some sort of a house with screaming people running around trying to grab you. This looked like just any other doctor's office I'd ever seen. Stacy headed over to me and sat down beside me. She reached in front of her and grabbed one of the magazines off the little table and started flipping through the pages. Exhaling into a state of relaxation, she spoke.
Now we just sit and wait.
Wait for what exactly?
Christina up front there just told me Betty is consulting with one of the doctors and should be out soon. When she comes out, then you can go talk to her. I'll be sitting here waiting for my guy to come get me. Then we can go sit in his office for an hour and chit chat.
What do I even say to her?
I don't know, dude. This was your wild ass idea.
Maybe I'll just tell her that I'm an old friend or something.
Seems like you got it all figured out after all.
Doesn't it seem weird to you that I would just randomly walk up to this woman and try to get her help to see this girl?
I told you from the beginning this whole idea was weird, but I support you and I got you here. Trust me, there's no part of me that thinks this is a good idea. But if it means a lot to you, then I will be here beside you. Well, that is until Dr. Steve comes to get me.
Well, good afternoon, Stacy. I am just going to check in with reception and I'll be right with you.
No worries, dude.
I figure your doctor would be in a doctor's robe or something. It's not what I imagined at all.
He's not like a doctor you go see for a cold or something. He's a head shrink. I have no idea what the difference between a therapist or a psychologist is anyway. As far as I'm concerned, they're all just people who listen to other people bitch and make stupid money for doing it. The other lady I met with before this guy wouldn't shut up about her own life, so I told her in one of our interviews that she should be paying me to listen to her shit. I'm sure you could imagine she wasn't too happy about that, so I wound up with Dr. Steve over there.
Why do you call him doctor if he isn't one, though?
He is a doctor, just not like your regular doctors.
Stacy's therapist started to walk over and he spoke to us.
Okay, I'm all ready if you are.
Yep, let's get this over with.
Wait a second, Stacy. What should I do?
I told you already, dude. Just chill out here. Read a magazine or something and see what happens. I'll meet you back here in an hour.
Stacy began walking down the hallway shortly behind her therapist. I was so nervous being in this building all alone, waiting for someone to hopefully walk by me. It had been so many years since I'd even seen Nurse Betty. How would I even remember what she looked like? There were just too many questions rolling around in my head, and I decided to do what Stacy suggested and just picked up a magazine and started reading. It was only maybe about 10 minutes into reading some article on how to make a dish called panzanella when I heard someone say the name Betty. The janitor that was mopping the floor down the hall had said something, but I know I heard the name Betty. I put the magazine down and walked over to see if I could see someone, and as I rounded the corner into the main hallway, I happened to bump into someone knocking paperwork onto the floor. I knelt and assisted in scooping them up, and I noticed that it had the name Betty Jones written on top of them. I didn't know Nurse Betty's last name, but I figured I should give it a shot. I tried to stack the papers in a pile as neatly as I could, and as I handed back to her,
Thank you for scooping those up for me.
"It's not a problem. I'm sorry for bumping you in like that."
Please, it was my fault. I just have so much on my mind I should have been paying more attention. I didn't hurt you or anything, did I?
"No, not at all. Hey, I have a really weird question for you, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, what can I do for you?
You wouldn't happen to be Nurse Betty from the Reedsville School, would you?"
Well, I have since retired, but yes, I was nurse over there. Why do you ask?
"I actually used to go there, and I thought you looked familiar."
What's your name, dear?
"My name is Gwen. You probably wouldn't remember me, as I think we only met once."
Well, it wouldn't happen to be Gwendolyn Murphy now, would it?
"Actually, yeah, it is. How did you know that?"
There ain't many people with that name I have come across, dear. I don't think I know you personally, but I did hear about what happened with your family. I am very sorry you had to go through that at such a young age.
"Thank you. And I'm sorry it happened too."
Are you here seeing a professional? This place is good for that sort of thing, and it takes great bravery to seek out help.
"No, that's not the reason for my visit here today. I came over with a friend, and, well, actually, the main reason I'm here is to see you."
To see me? What is it I can do for you?
"Well, it's going to sound odd, but an old friend of mine before I moved away died, and I heard her older sister was a resident here. I was told by my friend that you might know her. Her name's Stella Morgan."
Yes, I know Stella, and yeah, she does live here. What business do you have with her?
"Well, I was very close with her sister Cecile, and when I returned home, I heard about her passing, and I wanted to see if there's anything I could do to help her sister out. I was informed about what happened to her, and I thought the least I could do was check in on her."
That's very kind of you. Did you know Stella personally?
"I had seen her in passing, but we never officially met. Cecile was a kind person, and I just wanted to pay that kindness forward."
Well, Stella's in the more scheduled part of this hospital, and I don't think you would have any luck seeing her on your own. I used to do some consulting work with her doctor, but now I just come to visit her a few times a week to make sure she's okay. I was just leaving a meeting with her doctor and on my way to visit if you would like to join me.
"That would be great. I appreciate you letting me tag along with you."
It's not a problem at all. I just need to get you a visitor's pass from reception, so wait right here.
Betty walked over to the counter and started talking to the receptionist. I couldn't believe how easy that was. This entire time, I was worrying myself, thinking that this was going to be a near impossible task. Betty turned around and handed me a green sticker that said visitor on it. I unpeeled the sticker and placed it on my shirt and began to follow Betty in the opposite direction that Stacy went. Roughly 50 feet ahead of us were some double doors that automatically opened as we approached them. Once we walked through the door, and there were hospital rooms with little windows in them, so you could peer inside. My curiosity couldn't help but glance through each one of them as we walked towards where Stella would be. I didn't happen to see anyone, which I thought was odd, but I kept following Betty anyway. We approached the circular station where some nurses were sitting on computers.
Good afternoon, Betty. Here to visit Miss Morgan again?
Yes, I am, and I'm bringing a family friend with me here too.
That's great. I'll buzz you right in after you sign the clipboard.
Not a problem at all.
Betty signed the clipboard on the counter and we started walking over to the big double doors. As we waited for the doors to open, the nurse spoke out.
Excuse me, miss. I need you to sign in as well.
I walked back over to the counter and signed my name on the visitor's form.
Did Betty tell you that we do allow food or drinks in the ward?
Yeah, she told me, and I don't have anything on me.
That's great. I hope you enjoy your visit. I'm sure Miss Morgan will be pleased to see you.
Thank you. I started walking back towards Betty, and the little buzzer rang out as the other double doors slowly opened. As we walked into the large room, there was another nurse's station directly across from a little lounge area. In the lounge area, there were a few women playing tabletop games and a few seated on the couch watching TV. The nurses at the station must have known why we were here as they got up and headed down the hall upon seeing us. This place looked nothing like I had imagined. It reminded me almost of like a dorm room in some college. Not that I'd ever been to one, but it just reminded me of what I think one would look like.
They have to go get her, and then you two can sit down over here at one of the tables and visit.
Will you be staying with me?
Well, I'll introduce you, then I will visit some of the other girls I watch over while you talk. I will only be over there at the couches, so if you need me, I'll be right there.
I waited patiently for a few moments, taking in my surroundings and watching two girls play a card game. It was quiet in here, other than the TV, which was playing some sort of cartoon on it. I thought to myself, maybe I should have come to a place like this instead of living homeless for so many years. Maybe I could have gotten some real help and had a pretty nice place to live. Being in here was nothing like the hardships I had to endure every day. Maybe after I figure out why I'm here in the first place, this was something I could look into.
Well, there you are. How you feeling today?
I looked over to see who Betty was talking to, and before me was a girl. She was wearing loose-fitted pajamas and seemed to be in some sort of a trance. Her black hair hanging a little past her shoulders slightly covered her eyes and looked like no one was occupying her body. It made me think of that old saying, the lights are on, but no one's home. Betty started to escort the girl over to the table and sat beside a window. She helped the girl sit into the chair, but the girl kept staring towards the floor. I looked over at Betty for a suggestion on what I should do, and she signaled to me to sit across from her. I slowly sat down in my seat and stared over at the girl. She seemed to be fidgeting with her sleeves on her pajamas and her hand on her lap.
Stella, this is Gwen, and she came to visit with you. I'm going to let you girls chat for a little bit, and I'll be right over there.
Stella didn't say anything at all. She just kept on with what she was doing. Betty walked over and whispered in my ear to be patient with her and keep the conversation in positive things. I didn't know what I could possibly bring up to strike a conversation with a girl I didn't even know, so nervously I spoke out, "That's a pretty shirt you have on there."
Do I know you?
No, not me personally, but we knew the same people back in school.
Why are you here?
Well, I was in town and I wanted to stop by and see you. I wanted to see if you needed anything.
If you don't know me, why would you stop by here?
Well, I knew your sister from school and she always looked out for me, so I just wanted to return the favor.
I don't have a sister.
Your sister's name's Cecile, don't you remember?
I just told you I don't have a sister.
I could tell she was getting a little upset with me bringing that up, and I thought it might be best not to say anything. I couldn't understand how could she not remember having a sister. Betty knew who I was looking to see, but maybe somehow Stella's memory wasn't working. It did occur to me that she may be heavily sedated and might not be thinking clearly. I thought of something else to ask her as I spoke. How do you like it here?
Why do you want to know?
I'm just striking up a conversation, I guess.
This is home. It's all I've ever known. I have no one or nothing.
You have Betty, don't you?
She is just some woman who comes to visit me, but I don't know who she is. Somehow she seems to know me, but I can't remember how.
You don't remember anything about your past?
I don't have a past. All I have is what you see around you. Why are you asking me all these questions?
Stella, you weren't raised here. This isn't your home. We went to the same school together and you have a family.
If I have a family, where are they? Why can't I remember them?
You grew up on the street over from where my family is on Red Oak. You lived there with your dad and your sister.
I already told you I don't have a fucking sister.
Stella slammed her hands down hard on the table and stared me straight in the face with complete anger. I knew I had to back off because I was starting to get the attention of the medical staff. Maybe this was just a bad idea coming here and making her relive these bad memories. I just couldn't understand how could she have no memory at all of the life she had before this one. I waited a few moments in silence, allowing her to calm down. She took her elbows and placed them on the table in front of her and then rested her head in her hands. The sleeve on her shirt slid down enough on her arm just so I could see some deep scars. I couldn't tell if they were self-inflicted or if something had happened. They didn't look like they were fresh, but they do look like they were severe at one point. How did you get those scars on your arm?
I don't know. My whole body is covered in them, but I don't know how they got there.
Well, I heard a saying a long time ago about scars, and that scars are a reminder to let you know the past is real. So, that right there is just proof that you had a life before all this.
That's a clever saying. I'm not sure why I feel so close to that, but somehow that makes sense to me.
Exactly. I remember you used to hang out with the kids behind Pomodoros after school. You would play down at the lake, with the rest of us in summer. We all went to the same school.
Was I happy?
I didn't know you well, but I think you were.
I wish I could remember that. There's no happiness here. There's no sadness either. It's just each and every day I feel like I forget even more. I just feel numb. No direction, just an endless loop of nothingness.
I'm sorry, Stella. I wish there was something I could do for you.
Tell me who you are. Tell me about your life outside of here.
Well, my life hasn't been great recently. I just came back to Reedsville in search of something. I honestly don't know what I'm looking for, but I felt drawn back here. I moved away a long time ago after something happened to me. When I came back, I heard what had happened to you, and I wanted to pay you a visit to see if there's anything I could do to help you.
What can you give me?
I'm not sure, honestly.
Will I see you again?
If you want me to, then I can certainly come back to see you. I don't live in town anymore, but I could stop by before I leave again.
I want to know why you think I have another life outside of here. I want you to tell me about my life.
I don't think I can tell you about that. I just don't think it's my place for me to tell you that.
Then tell me about your family.
I don't really have one anymore. My parents died some time ago. I miss them a lot. My dad used to have a shop in town. It's called Lou's Auto Body. Do you remember it? Stella slowly lowered her arms onto the table and folded them in front of me. Gently lifting her head, she began staring at me like I must have struck a nerve. Is it possible that she remembered my dad's shop? I had to ask her more questions to see if she remembered things. It's located near the store we all went to growing up, the Reedsville General Store. Do you remember that place?
Pete?
Who is Pete? I had to think for a second. I realized Peter was the owner's son. This was proof she did have some memory laying around in there. I was going to use this opportunity to try to help her unlock some of her past. Maybe a simple happy memory in her life could be the greatest gift I could give her. Confidently, I spoke out, Yes, Stella, that's right. Pete owns the store.
I don't know why I said that. I don't know him.
You must know him. We all went there growing up for food and drinks. His father owned the store many years ago.
I just told you I don't know him.
You do, Stella. You just said his.
Yeah, I just told you I don't fucking know him.
Stella was standing up and yelling at me, and I began to feel frightened. I thought at any moment she was going to jump over the table at me. Her eyes, almost glowing with anger, stared hard at me with the sole intent of causing pain. Betty saw this and came rushing over to try to calm her down. She placed her arms over Stella and spoke.
It's okay, Stella. Just try to relax. Everything is fine. I think that's enough of a visit for today.
The nurses from the station came over and began escorting Stella back towards her room. I was still shaken up from the whole thing and just sat there, paused in my seat. Betty reached for my hand and helped me to my feet. She began escorting me back towards the way we came in and waved goodbye to the nurses. As the buzzer rang out and the double doors opened, we quickly left the ward. On the walk back to the entrance, I felt as if I'd done something wrong. That maybe I pushed Stella too hard. Why did I have to go and open those wounds for her when she had already been through so much in her life? Who was I to dictate what was good for her and when I couldn't even get my own life right? How would I feel if someone was trying to make me remember the awful things from my past? I should have never come here, and that's what I told myself as we entered back in the main lobby. I saw Stacy sitting down in the lobby reading a magazine again. Before I could leave Betty's side and walk over to her, Betty grabbed my arm above the elbow and asked,
What did you say to her to get her like that?
I honestly don't know.
Well, what were you talking about?
I was asking her if she remembered things from Reedsville. I brought up the general store, and she said the name Pete.
Pete? Like Pete Citarelli?
I think so. I tried to ask her more, but she just got angry.
Geez, Gwen, what did you do?
I didn't do anything. I was just talking to her.
I knew there was something wrong here. I found it strange myself that she had no recollection of her past. I know sometimes with trauma victims, these things happen, but I found it especially strange she couldn't remember anything. There are a few girls here I have to visit with that have the same problem and haven't experienced the things Stella has endured.
What do you think happened to her?
I honestly don't know, and it seems the more I ask the doctor about it, I get these hollow answers. I think there is more to the story than we can see right now.
How did she get those scars on her arm?
Well, let's have a seat and I'll tell you what I know.
We walked over to the waiting room and sat down, and Betty began to explain.
Before Stella was brought in here, she seemed normal. I met her when she was younger because she was always trying to fake illnesses to get out of things. So of course she would come to my office and I would look her over. There was nothing wrong with her, just normal teen stuff. We would talk and I got to know her well. Then she graduated and shortly after that her sister died. The police ruled it as a suicide, but I don't think Stella believed that's what really happened. It had been some time until I saw her. Then one day, a little more than a year ago, she wound up back at school. She had gotten into school on a visitor's pass to visit the ex boyfriend of her sister, and then she collapsed in the hallway. The staff called me to where she was, and I brought her to my office to examine her. When she woke up, we chatted for a bit, and then she left.
Was she okay? Did she seem like there was something wrong?
She seemed okay to me, other than maybe a little disoriented. She asked me about her sister, and I explained to her that I couldn't talk about one of my patients. I informed her that her sister and her ex-boyfriend weren't getting along, and he filed a restraining order on her.
Why would he do that?
I think Cecile didn't want the relationship to be over, and I couldn't accept that. After I told her that, she left my office, and that's when all hell broke loose.
Did she have something to do with his death? I mean, I was up at the lake and I saw the memorial up there.
Police didn't think she did as they ruled it a suicide. They found the boy had hung himself from the rope swing. Later that evening, Stella found her dad dead in her living room from an overdose. They said she was mixing prescription medication with alcohol and that his heart stopped.
Wow, this girl really had to deal with a lot.
That's just the tip of the iceberg. Stella was seeing a therapist in town, and when she wound up breaking into her office that night and tried to hurt her.
Why would she do that?
As crazy as it sounds, we found out later that the woman treating her was using a false name, and it was proven to be her mother posing as a doctor to get close to her. We believe Stella broke into her office that night to confront her, and in the process cut her arm wide open and almost bled out. Her doctor was hurt, but nothing serious, and luckily was saved by the police showing up. When the police arrived, they found Stella bleeding out on the ground, and they brought her to the hospital. While she stayed in the hospital, she began having fits of anger, so they placed her in a confinement in order to protect her. They believe she had a psychotic break.
What happened to her doctor?
She was brought to the hospital to treat her minor wounds, and then when the police started to piece together what had happened, she vanished before they could be questioned.
How does someone vanish from a hospital?
Well, at the time, no one knew she was a person of interest, so she just got up and left. They haven't seen her since, but the police still are looking for her. I know the detective assigned to the case and see him from time to time. His name is Chris Hunt.
So why is Stella here? Can't they release her?
It's complicated. Stella suffers from not only memory loss, but she is heavily medicated for her violent outbursts. I am sure you can understand that after what you just saw. I know at one point she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, but that still doesn't account for everything else. There must be something going on, because I can think of at least 4 different girls in this ward alone that have similar issues.
I mean, this is a nut house. Isn't it possible they are all here for good reason?
It's probably the girls are unwell, yes, but for all of them to not remember anything from their past doesn't make any sense.
So how can we help them?
Well, I've been trying to figure that out for myself. I visit here quite often, but until today I had no way of knowing what I should do. I prayed on it many nights for someone to give me the answers, and today my prayers were answered. God must have sent you to me, Gwen.
Me? What did I do?
Selfishly, when you told me the reason for your visit here today, I was hoping that you might invoke something in Stella to prove to me that she still had some memories from her life before this. When I saw her react, that's when I knew that Stella, I always knew, was in there somewhere. The only logical explanation I could come up with was maybe the medication they had her on was suppressing her memories as well.
So what do we do?
When? What do you mean, what do we do? We aren't getting involved in this shit. I mean, for God's sake, you don't even know this girl.
Stacy, we have to help her. Think about it. If you were in this position, wouldn't you try to help me?
Yeah, I would, but this isn't you. You're not thinking rational, dude. You have been drinking all day long, and you're not thinking this out. Let's go back to my house, and we can talk about it in the morning.
I appreciate your help, Gwen, and I need to think what I can do to help Stella out. Can I contact you when I have time to think about it?
Yes, please do. Stacy, give Betty your cell phone number. Stacy reached into her pocket and they exchanged numbers. After Stacy had given the number to Betty, she walked out of the hospital and headed for her car. I stayed back for a second to ask Betty, I promise, I will help you figure this out. Just give me a call when you have a plan in place and how I can help. If you need me, I'll be staying at Stacy's house on Pine Street. You can't miss it. It's across from the one my parents lived in that burned down.
Thank you, Gwen, and God bless you.
And that's chapter 5. All right. Let's give a big hand to Steve and Stormy. All right. Thank you. Thank you. So, as you can see in the chapter, there's a lot going on. So here is where we break down the Easter eggs and stuff like that. So one of the first Easter eggs is we are introduced to a new character, Dr. Stephen Tango. It was actually named after Steve here, and the last name Tenga was named after a doctor he was talking to me about at the time when I was writing this. So I kind of just mixed those together. There's actually a couple people from work that are mentioning this. I explained earlier when we were doing the live chats about Ryan Chambers, how I came up with that because of my coworker's name being Ryan, and I was going through training for the rural carriers. The guy giving the training, his last name was Chambers. So I put those together. So we're also reintroduced to Stella, who's completely different than where we left off with her in the first book. And then also Nurse Betty, who's having a more active role in the book now. You know, she's going to be a big part of this, as you can see above my head. So, Chapter 5, Remnants of Things Past, is an alteration of Marcel Proust's book, Remembrance of Things Past. That was my alteration to it while still giving a nod to it. The mental health ward was actually described after my time going to the mental health place here where I live. I went there, and when I was designing it in the book and stuff like that, I was just modeling it over what I was seeing every week when I was going there. So on page 99, 99, Stacy says her last shrink only talked about herself. That actually was from my own experience, because two of the shrinks that I saw there, they just constantly, for the entire hour that I was paying to be there, just kept talking and talking about themselves. They would ask me a question, I'd go to answer, and then they would go on a tirade about like their own life. Like the one lady that I last went there with, all she would do was sit there and talk about her grandchildren. And I just kept thinking to myself, I was like, you know, what Stacy said, like, maybe you should be paying me to listen to this. When Gwen's sitting down and she's going through the magazine and she's looking, she says that she came across a recipe for panzanella. And I have my daughter here tonight. It's her first time watching me do my live stream and stuff like that. Alana, if you want to say hi.
Hi.
So I had her, and one of our favorite dishes to make and eat is panzanella. And tomorrow, actually, for Thanksgiving, that is what we're going to be doing.
Hi, Stormy.
So that was a nod to that. It's one of Alana's favorites, so I threw that in there as well. You know, like I said, it's the first time that we meet Betty. She is 2 years older than where we saw her in the first book, but she doesn't have a whole lot going on in the first book. And the reason being is because she only briefly talks to Stella when Stella collapses in the school, but now she's going to play a more active role. And basically at this point is when she's playing an active role, she's going to help us get to the bottom of what's going on. She's going to navigate us through what she knows from the past to Gwen and Stacy, but also try to help figure out what's going on future-wise. So Betty's going to be a big role in this book. We also see Stella again. And when we see Stella again, she's heavily medicated. She's not really with it. She doesn't really know what's going on anymore. You know, her memories are just gone, and she just feels like empty and lost. You know, even Gwen points out at one point, like the scars on her arm and stuff, and she can't explain how she got them. Like she sees them and she wonders it, but she can't make sense of anything. And the reason is because the PC3 that she was taking in the first book and is still taking currently is erasing all the trauma in her life. And since her life was mostly filled with trauma, it's essentially chopping away the building blocks of almost everything. But if you remember from the first book, Pete was always a positive in her life. It was something she always looked forward to and stuff like that. So that's how that slight memory of him stuck around. But she couldn't justify it, and she couldn't understand why she subconsciously said that. It's because there was no bad memories to be erased that were tied to Pete. That was always a plus and a constant in her life. So that's how she remembered that. But because the foundations were being removed from the PC3, she couldn't link those memories back to anything in particular, just other than the name. And all of that's going to be explored more as we go forward with the book. You know, when we go to do the next chapter, which next Thursday we'll be doing, it's chapter 6, and it's called One for the Road. It's exactly how it sounds and stuff like that. You know, alcohol, all that, which is fitting because we just had our alcoholism live chat last night. So that's everything I have as far as tonight's chapter goes. Next Tuesday will be the next time that we meet up. And when we do meet up, we're going to be going over trauma. That's going to be our Tuesday night healing. All different types of trauma, how it affects you, especially if it happens in childhood, how it affects you as an adult, all of those things. So it's going to be a good one to watch. You know, I hope you guys all can join. And then next Thursday, we're going to do chapter 6, One for the Road. So I'm very excited to get into this because the more this book progresses, I'm sure anyone that's read it can tell you, it gets really, really good. So, it's just something that I'm really excited about. This is the book I put like all my heart and soul into, and it's just, it's such a great thing. So, Stormy, I don't know if you want to say anything before we cut out.
No, I just want to say thanks everybody for joining that watched it, and it was fun. I really enjoyed it, and happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Hi, Alana.
Hi, Chloe.
Yep. So, thank you guys all for tuning in. A big shout out to Steve and Stormy for doing their reading tonight. Me and Alana are going to be doing a whole lot of cooking tomorrow. It's going to be a great time. And, I'm looking forward to meeting up with you guys again next week. So happy Thanksgiving, everybody. And thank you so much for joining. All right. And I'll see you next week.